Welcome, everyone, to this episode of What Matters with me, Erica Edwards, and
Andrew Blackwood.
And Andrew is back again by popular demand. So Andrew was my, I think he was the fifth guest I had? About the fifth guest. And you have asked so many questions and you've requested him to come back. And Andrew has agreed. And even better, you will see Andrew once a month. He will be here once a month with me, covering different topics. We're going to help you address the issues you have. He has a very full toolbox, and we will teach you that not everything is a hammer. So
Right.
not everything is to be addressed with a hammer. So today, one of the first things we wanted to do was kind of recap our last show and address some of the questions that were asked. Now, Andrew had said something very interesting, and he said, well, I can't necessarily answer the questions, right? And do you want to explain that a bit, Andrew? What do you mean by that?
Sure. It's not just that there's a lot less pressure when I don't have to give people answers, but I want to dispel the myth that I know everything.
Really? You don't?
I don't, and my children help me to realize that more every day.
Yes, they're good at that.
So the reality is everyone's life is so different.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way I could be an expert on somebody's life. I meet with hundreds and hundreds of people, so I have, I guess, maybe a larger toolbox than most.
Right.
So my hope is not to have all the right answers as much as it is to empower people to find the answers. And sometimes the best tool to have is a question. So, and that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book the way that I did. At the end of each section, almost every chapter, there are several questions for people to consider, to think about their own situation, to open things up. Because when we're in the middle of a situation, sometimes it's hard to have an open perspective. Mm-hmm. So questions really help people to step back and consider things. So if somebody sends a question to me, even though I might think I know the answer, it's better, and it's even more ethical to kind of say what I would consider the questions that I would ask and those kinds of things.
Okay, so that is why he won't necessarily call it the answer to your question, but he'll definitely direct you send you in the right direction in terms of introspection and looking at the situation. And the thing is about our lives, no matter how confused we are, no matter how lost we feel, we do know the best answers for ourselves. It's just sometimes we need someone to help guide us and send us in the right direction. So there's a very big question, and it was one of my own as well, that I'm going to ask last. But we had a few viewers. They did write in. They sent me messages and so forth, asking me different questions. So because Erica does not have the ability to memorize things, as she wished she did. So excuse my paper shuffling. For all of my friends that said don't use paper, you're going to have to excuse me today, okay? Erica, don't use paper. So one person who had really, she had participated from the very beginning. She was very excited about the show. A friend of mine in Montreal, hi, Sabby, she had asked, now this is a great question. I think it's a great question because I have felt that way too. So she asked, I don't know how to deal with not wanting to say sorry because you don't feel that you have to. I had someone explain to me why they wanted an apology. I tried to look at it from all different angles, and I didn't feel like I was in the wrong. So I explained that and said that I would prefer not to give a fake sorry. They are upset. What should she do? And I know you're not, what was her name? Dear Jane? Dear Abby.
Right.
But so in a situation like this where somebody has come to you and said, I don't like what you've done. I would like an apology. I want you to tell me you're sorry. And what was great is that she said she reflected and she looked at it from different angles. So it wasn't just a reactive, I'm not sorry, but she thought about it and she was like, no, I don't feel that I was wrong. I don't have an apology for you. So I think it's great that she didn't want to be insincere, but at the same time, now you have this fractured relationship. So what do you do in an instance where someone feels that you should be apologizing and you don't feel so? What do we do?
For starters, she's not the only person. And if you haven't been there, there is a chance that you might be there someday. So it's important to kind of think about this. I appreciate the fact that she reflected. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if she reflected in that moment or did she kind of walk away and reflect and then come back to it. Because that's part of the beauty of a genuine apology. It's not just about one conversation. It is about maybe even several conversations. Mm-hmm. So if she was thinking about it on the spot and only thought about it for 5-10 seconds, she might want to take it back and think about it again. Mm-hmm. More often than not, when I experience things like that and I hear about that, it tells me that the two people are not on the same page. They're obviously not seeing things the same way. So there are several factors that could contribute to that. Mm-hmm. So is she being very clear about what was hurtful to her in the situation? Is she clear about what she wants and what difference an apology would make? Because some people say that they want an apology when that's not really what they want.
Okay, wait, hold on. You said that before, and I find that interesting. So someone says to you, I want you to apologize. You've hurt my feelings. You should tell me that you're sorry. But you're saying that that's not really what they're looking for?
Sometimes no, because some people you apologize to them, and it's not enough.
Yes,
they want more, and they want more.
They want more.
So it's not always that simple. Sometimes people do have a sense of entitlement, and they have difficulty acknowledging when they're wrong, and they want to shift the focus and the blame on other people. Mm-hmm. If you're dealing with that, then it might simply be we're just disagreeing.
We're going to agree to disagree.
Right, and it may end up being that way, but sometimes people want you to acknowledge where they're at and how they've been impacted, even if you're not wrong about it. For example, and on one level, that's what chapter 4 is all about in the book. It's what you do when an apology is not appropriate.
Okay.
So
not appropriate.
Yeah, because it's not always
You're right. And actually, you gave an example earlier, and I want you to give that example again because I found it very amusing.
About what?
With
my daughter?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm always learning from them. So an example would be if my daughter does something and, I'm saying, okay, as a result of this, you're going to spend some time doing this or in your room, or you're not going to be able to do this right now.
Right.
So she's going to be upset with me. And she is an expressive, articulate 5-year-old.
Oh, yes,
and she's going to tell me what I did, how I did it wrong, and why it's not fair. Mm-hmm. And I have the opportunity to say, you know what? I could see why you would feel it's not fair. You feel you're being treated unfairly. And I can acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. I can acknowledge that you're sad about the situation. I'm not going to say this to her necessarily, but I'm not sorry. No, I'm not sorry.
I'm not sorry I sent you to your room. You're back now telling me, you know what? You've upset me. I don't like what you did. It really wasn't cool. and you know the next part, and they're standing there waiting. Now you could say you're sorry
Right.
because I didn't like what you did. And in this case, which I think is an amazing example, I'm not sorry. I meant to send you to your room. That is what but you acknowledge the feeling. I understand that you were bored.
Exactly.
I understand that you didn't like, missing out on that event. And so that would be a circumstance where an apology is not appropriate.
Yes, definitely not appropriate because it's going to send a mixed message.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say, "Well, I'm sorry I sent you to your room," or "I'm sorry you're not going to get to watch, Peppa Pig," or whatever it is that you want to watch tonight, it's going to confuse her,
Right.
and she's going to ask me, "Well, if you're sorry,
Why'd you do it?
then why are you doing it?"
Mm-hmm.
So not only am I going to acknowledge her feelings, but might have some feelings about it too. I don't like it when she's upset.
Mm-hmm.
So I might be, and I'm upset that you're upset. So what are we going to do differently the next time? Chapter 4 is about the compassionate acknowledgement. I can acknowledge what has happened with compassion and with empathy without taking responsibility, right? So that's an important thing to consider. Sometimes people just want you to acknowledge, right? What you did was hurtful. Yeah, it was hurtful. I can see why it'd be hurtful, and I wouldn't use the but.
No, but I
right?
have to take
right?
away the but
Try
out
to
of
stay away from the but.
in an apology. You can often put a period there and then start another sentence, right?
Yes, and instead as well that works. So to
And
say
instead of but.
right.
Okay.
I do feel sad that you don't get to do what you want tonight, and hopefully tomorrow you get a chance because we can do this over, and then I can embrace her, I can hug her because she's sad without removing the consequence. Because sometimes when we're dealing with children, we don't engage, and sometimes it's true with adults, we don't engage emotionally because we believe we're going to send a mixed message.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm clear with my words and I can say, you know what, I realize what I said was hurtful, and I don't know how else to say what it is that I want to say to you without it being hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
For example, it could be something somebody might have bad breath.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's not my fault. If I have a close enough relationship, I can tell them about that. It might be hurtful for them.
And they could end up getting mad, coming back and going, you know what, I really don't like what you said to me. You hurt my feelings and it wasn't right. And then they stand there and they look at you.
Right. Exactly.
And the next part is they're waiting. And in that case, it would be an inappropriate apology.
Yeah.
Because I really also too believe that saying you're sorry when you don't mean it, also too that reflex sorry. I have a very dear close friend of mine, and she's always saying she's sorry.
Yeah.
And I tell her that takes away your power. And it takes away the power of your words. And it's for everything. If she calls, oh, I'm sorry, but can I speak to so-and-so? Sorry, but can you... Why do you keep apologizing, literally, for regular everyday things? So taking that out of her vocabulary has empowered her quite a bit.
That's awesome.
So when we come back from this break, I know Anisha's proud of me, we're going to address one or two other questions that we got, and then the big question, which is, how do you forgive yourself? What is the process there? So we'll be right back after this break.
Are you retiring smart? Make your home's equity work for you. With your home's equity and our 30 years of experience, the Retire Smart Properties team can help you achieve the quality of life you've always wanted. Our services are 360 degrees. We'll give you advice, take care of staging and selling, and help you find the perfect home and community to transition to. It's time to enjoy the retirement lifestyle you deserve. Visit our website today to learn how you can use your home to retire comfortably. The Retire Smart Properties team, powered by RE/MAX West.
Welcome back. Yes, we have a lot of fun during commercial breaks. So, Andrew, you said you wanted to circle back to this last question before we go forward. Okay.
So, and I appreciate your help in not sharing too much about the book. But, the trouble with me is sometimes I want to be thorough because I don't want to leave people hanging and I don't want to miscommunicate.
This is called Professionalism 101.
That I'm learning from you. I'm being schooled here. I love it. So what I want to circle back to is the other side of the compassionate acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. And was it Savvy?
Yes, Savvy.
Savvy. So sometimes we're looking for things that are so big to take responsibility for, mm-hmm. and it's hard to see those things because usually the content of what we say to people is what we mean. But sometimes it's the packaging that might have upset somebody, whether it's a tone or the timing or the location of what it is that you said that might be hurtful to the person.
Right.
So, I mean, sometimes it's not even a whole different perspective as much as it is looking more closely at what it is that might have been hurtful to the person.
The delivery, because they say it's 90% of communication is body language. Yep. So, as I've explained to my kids, for example, in saying that was rude, and they'll say, well, all I said was no. And I say there's a huge difference between now and no. Those are two very different statements. And then also, too, it is our nature as humans that we fill in the blanks. That's what you do. That's what your brain automatically does visually, auditorily, and I'm sure emotionally, where there are things you don't understand, so then you use your experience to fill in those blanks.
Right.
So, for example, I know Savvy personally, so I know she's a straight talker, and if someone's used to people that beat more around the bush and are not used to people who are so direct,
right.
that might seem very abrasive and very mean, and,
mm-hmm.
pulling that coworker aside and saying, you know what, there's some medication you can take because I see that you obviously have a situation with your breath, and da-da-da-da-da, and they may be like, what happened to the, I don't want to hurt your feelings, and they wanted all the frills and the icing, and you just gave them cake.
Right.
And so that the delivery could also be the offense, not so much the content, but how it was told, or even if you're emotional yourself at the time, you may not say it in the correct way.
And there's so many different parts and pieces to all these different situations. So many things could be interpreted, misinterpreted, miscommunicated. That's another reason why it's not good to just give people advice.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's important to kind of reflect on those things.
So for that first question, and I'm sure other people have had that question, what do you do when someone wants an apology from you and you are not sorry because you do not feel that you've done anything wrong? And the summary of the answer is reanalyze the situation, and not just in it, but walk away, reflect, check yourself. And I think that's like life's number one rule of thumb. Just check yourself. Make sure that you're not the offender, and go back. And then there's also not offering an insincere apology, and just what was the phrasing? A
compassionate acknowledgement.
Compassionate acknowledgement. So there's the tool, not the answer.
Yeah,
the tool,
I like that. The tool,
in a nutshell, it's a compassionate acknowledgement, acknowledging the fact that you recognize their feelings and they matter to you, and also to maybe sharing your own feelings. So I think that is an amazing tool to use in a situation where apology is requested or demanded and you do not have one to give. Stay true to yourself, be sincere, your words matter. So another great question, and I'm going to kind of summarize it. It's a lady speaking about husbands, but we can generalize, right? We can just say people. And why is it that some people, when they are wrong, do not come back at that time and say, I realize I was wrong. I'm sorry. You were right. We should have done it this way. And why is it so hard? And she specified men, but why is it so hard for some people, because there are women like that too, to acknowledge when they realize it at the moment that they're wrong and they're not right? What is that? A defensiveness? Is that
probably a lot of the times it might be. Right, there could be a number of reasons, and I'll speak for myself.
Okay.
Sometimes it's not so much that it's difficult to acknowledge when I'm wrong, as much as it is difficult for me, even in the moment, to pull apart all of those parts and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't think I have an issue with saying when I'm wrong. I actually don't mind being wrong because then I have an opportunity to learn. It doesn't always feel good.
No, it does not.
It doesn't
I
always,
agree.
and I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at it.
Especially with a 5-year-old.
I was more so thinking about my wife in my head because she's a woman full of wisdom too. So there's a lot for me to learn from her. Yet we're different people. We see things from different perspectives. So if I want to try something my way, or if I don't get the opportunity to fully explain what it is, because she's not just a regular woman full of wisdom. She's a strong woman full of wisdom. Right? So you take two strong people and you put them in the same room, then there's going to be some conflict sometimes. Mm-hmm. So it's what I encourage people to do is ensure that both people are being heard, because both people have valuable perspectives.
Right.
More often than not, it's not about being right or being wrong. There's more than one way to do something. It's more about being heard. So what's the value in doing it that way? Are there any downsides to doing it that way? Because there's value and there are downsides to doing it my way too. But if we don't take the time to walk through that, then we're going to be in conflict and we're not going to know how to move forward together.
I agree 100% with what you say. And a part to that, I think, is that, I mean, there can be instances, depending on the person, and even from situation to situation, of ego, doing something a certain way, it not working, and, feeling, like you said, it's your feelings, like you feel badly it didn't work out, or you're embarrassed it didn't work out. And sometimes what we have to do is we have to give people space to come to us in their time. It's not necessarily that he will not apologize and come back to his wife and say, you know what, you were right, that worked out, or he may not say it in exactly those words, but sometimes you have to give people a bit of time to process how they feel, especially if they're bruised a bit from something not working out.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important factor too. And then also too, I think that there are some personalities that being right is really important to them. And it's not even about a situation working out. It's I'm right and you're wrong. And I think, again, that self-analyzing, when you look back at yourself and say, is what I'm doing of value? Like, demanding that you acknowledge I'm right. Is it a value, really? Like, is it just to stroke my ego? What is the value of getting back, you were right?
Right. It's right. We're talking about being right. It's interesting because sometimes we oversimplify things, even when it's to the point of saying that somebody has a way, or they have an attitude, or they're entitled, or it's pride. And we all have baggage. We all come to our relationships with stuff. And sometimes we don't know what our stuff is. Mm-hmm. And they might have stuff that's preventing them from practicing at being humble and okay with making mistakes. It might mean something a whole lot to them. So it's important to, like you're saying, give them the space. But there are sometimes things that we can do to make the environment okay for people to acknowledge when they're wrong, or to say that they've made a mistake, or to say that they've hurt you, or they made the wrong decision. When we have a judgmental kind of response to people, or we rub it in their faces, I told you it wasn't going to work. Why'd you go into, you should, the language that we use and the attitude that we have, it's not going to invite someone to say when they're wrong. And then that makes moving forward even more difficult.
And I really like that part about the unlabeled baggage that we have. Like, some of us have parcels. We don't even know what's in the parcel.
I met with a couple today, and they're on a great track towards getting married, and they've asked themselves the difficult questions. And we were talking about the baggage that we come with. Everybody has baggage.
That's right.
But very few people actually itemize what the contents of their baggage, because we have stuff in this bag, in our luggage, that's not ours, that's hand-me-downs, right? Things that don't fit,
generational trauma,
right? And patterns and things that are dirty, things that you don't want anymore. So if we go through a process where we can like, okay, yeah, I want this. I just need to clean this. I'm gonna keep that. You move from having like 5 pieces of luggage to 1 carry-on.
This is the best analogy ever. I love it. And to add to this baggage part, I very much believe also too, I'm very wary of people who have no baggage. How do you get to that point in your, especially like when I hear people that are in their 30s and 40s and they're like, well, I want to meet somebody and I don't want them to have this and I don't, no I'm like, that would creep me out if I met a 35-year-old man who had no past history, no past love. Where did you come from?
Right.
I mean, no baggage is for very young people. And even then, you have, like you said, you have hand-me-downs. You have stuff that other people packed for you and gave to you on your journey through life that you open up and you don't even know. Okay, Anisha's telling me to stop. We will be back with the answer to how do you forgive yourself? And we're going to touch on, what was the next thing we were going to touch on?
We have a couple things.
That's why he comes back every month. We're going to be back after this message.
Are you retiring smart? Make your home's equity work for you. With your home's equity in our 30 years of experience, the Retire Smart Properties team can help you achieve the quality of life you've always wanted. Our services are 360 degrees. We'll give you advice, take care of staging and selling, and help you find the perfect home and community to transition to. It's time to enjoy the retirement lifestyle you deserve. Visit our website today to learn how you can use your home to retire comfortably. The Retire Smart Properties team, powered by RE/MAX West.
Welcome back to What Matters with me, Erica Lita, and my guest,
Andrew Blackwood.
Andrew Black, aka Coach Drew, which I think I'm going to start calling him. Don't move your microphone, Anisha will kill us. Okay. Did you hear that little voice going? I will. Okay, so we were talking about, the last thing we touched on was we did the baggage. Like I said, I love the baggage analogy of how we go through life. We get bags, we carry them, we come out with bags, and we need to unpack, and we need to figure out why. And I think that's the biggest, the art of the genuine apology, that's the biggest lesson I've learned reading this book and hearing about it from the author himself, is that apologizing, a huge part of apologizing is analyzing yourself.
Becoming more self-aware.
And I think it's a very painful thing for a lot of people. For everybody, it's hard. It's hard to admit your faults. It's hard to admit your shortcomings, but it makes you such a better person.
It does.
It makes you such a better person. So it's really worth digging into that luggage, taking out all the smelly bits, emptying out those bags, and seeing what you have and what doesn't belong to you, and release what isn't yours. What is not for you and does not serve you, you need to release. And then you have professionals that can help you if you're stuck, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. Now, a huge part of unpacking that baggage and that self-analysis is acknowledging, okay, you have a problem, you don't understand why you react in a certain way, or someone does something and you overreact it according to them and maybe according to society. But for you, it was a reasonable reaction, or maybe not. And you dig in and you realize things, and then there are things that we've done, actions we've taken, and we need to learn to forgive ourselves to move on. right? That's a really huge part of development in life, is learning how to forgive and let go, especially for yourself. And I know for myself personally, I am hardest on myself, and I've had a very hard time forgiving myself for certain things and not even recognizing that's what it was. That's why I was stuck in that. And so when now there's not another person telling you, I require an apology and this is how I feel. This is all an internal dialogue. What are the tools? How do you start the process of healing yourself by forgiving yourself for your past actions and mindsets and so forth? What do you do?
You know, there are a number of things come to mind for me, Erica. One of them is, how well do we understand ourselves, and what tool do we use to better understand ourselves? I love journaling, and a lot of people don't like it for one reason or another, and we can come back to how to do it in a way that is more user-friendly, but that's one of the ways that I kind of walk through things and better understand how I'm thinking, because you talk about internal dialogue, and while somebody might not be in the room, that doesn't mean there's not another voice in your head, part of your internal dialogue. So let's say, for example, guilt is one of the emotions that you're struggling with. There's, excuse me, and I talk about it in the book a little bit, because guilt is one of the most complex emotions to deal with, and you can actually be factually like in a state of guilt, or you can be caught up in the emotion of guilt. Sometimes they go together, sometimes they don't. So what thoughts and beliefs are causing you to still feel guilty? Let's say the person has forgiven you and they've moved on, but you're having trouble forgiving yourself.
That happens a lot, yes.
You might have a thought in your mind that, you know what, they probably haven't really forgiven me, right? Or you might be judging yourself to say, what I did was so bad. How could I do that? I'm such a bad person, right? So if you're not aware of that kind of message that you're repeating to yourself over and over and over, it's going to be difficult to move forward.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So
you don't even feel that you deserve the forgiveness of the person, and that's why, even though they're like, I'm good with this now, I'm resolved, and they skip along, and you're like, no, but I'm horrible, I'm terrible, look what I've done to you, and you're not letting that go.
Right. And that's if you even believe what they've said, right? Because let's say they don't want to be in relationship with you anymore. You might interpret that as they haven't forgiven you, because you would equate forgiveness with reconciliation. So there are deeper levels to that. But if you are talking to yourself and you're like, okay, I'm such a horrible person, I can't believe I did that, that might prevent you from forgiving yourself. Another thing that might prevent you from forgiving yourself is expectations that you might not feel badly about what has happened. Sometimes people think that forgiveness is just a one-time shot. If I've forgiven somebody, I won't have feelings about it. Or if I forgive myself, I won't have any unpleasant feelings about it. For me, I know that's not true.
Right.
Because sometimes triggers. It's like a bad breakup.
Right.
Just because you moved on doesn't mean that you're not gonna smell something that reminds you of somebody or see something, right? These things,
the song comes on and you gotta pull over and
right?
and yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that there isn't opportunities to forgive again and go through a process or move deeper with the process.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that you haven't forgiven yourself. So there are a number of levels to it, but if you become more aware of the messaging that you're repeating to yourself that's not helpful, it's not true, it's not accurate, then we can do that. Then there's the experiences of forgiveness that you might have had. If you've had experiences of forgiveness with other people that haven't gone the distance, that haven't been, if you don't know what it's like to really be forgiven and to experience grace and freedom, then it's going to be difficult to give that to yourself as well, right? Whether we're talking about baggage or we're talking about forgiveness or we're talking about all these generational patterns, everything that happens to us and through us, it happens through relationships. That's the medium that things come through. So if you're having difficulty doing something, although you're an individual, that doesn't mean that there aren't other relationships that have contributed to the development of that experience.
Absolutely. I get it completely. And that is that internal dialogue. So, summary, the internal dialogue, if you are struggling to forgive yourself for something, you again need to dig deep and figure out why. Do you not believe that the person forgave you? That you've done something and they've said, I do forgive you, but they no longer interact with you. So you perceive that as not being forgiven. Or you feel that your action was so bad that you can't understand how someone can forgive you. So I think that reflection and walking through it, talking yourself through it, and realizing why it is you are stuck at that place and letting go. And it's interesting you said something that I've been told by someone, I said I'm sorry, don't ever bring it up again. Like, that's it. We're never going to speak about this again because I said I'm sorry, and you will not keep beating me over the head with the same bat. Now it's done. We move on, and the door's closed, sealed, never to be opened again. And what you just said made me feel very validated in that there are triggers. And forgiveness is not a one-time deal. It's an ongoing process, especially in an ongoing relationship. Right? So
Right.
we have to be mindful of that. Now, before we break for the next segment, let us start with talking to the non-talkers. Now, because I am a woman, I can only speak from my perspective. And he's a little bit outnumbered because there's 2 women in the room and only 1 man. And for myself, I have met men, and I'm really speaking more about romantic relationships, who are not talkers. They don't like to talk, especially about feelings. They talk about things, cars and sports and stats and things, sneakers and children, but not feelings. So if you have, and sometimes they even talk enough to tell you they don't like to talk about these things. They'll tell you that. So then what begins is this cycle of frustration, because I obviously want to know what you're thinking or what you're feeling or why you've done something or haven't done something, but you don't communicate with me in a way that I'm used to, which is words. And if you are not a talker, how are people supposed to understand where you're coming from? How do you communicate with someone who isn't a talker? How does this work? So one answer is, how does this work?
There are many different kinds of talkers and non-talkers and moments when people, or topics that people don't feel comfortable talking with. Mm-hmm. So I know we're going to break shortly, but you know what? You were talking about someone, right before you raised this, we were talking about a situation where somebody wasn't talking about something. Now it slipped my mind.
Well, I was speaking to Anisha, and I was saying that, if something happens, for example, and the situation does not play out well, and you go to speak to them about it, and they shut down on you. I've tried different ways of communicating with them, understanding that maybe, if I say a little bit and I open the door, then they'll come with the rest. Or maybe if I kind of say their part, and that's really bad, I know it. You should not be finishing other people's sentences and telling them what they're thinking. I'm guilty, I know. But, trying that way where I kind of tell you what you're thinking and then you agree or disagree and check the box.
Right.
And then it usually ends up being frustration coming out, you yelling, you don't talk to me, what the hell am I supposed to do this? And then you could see the person close up further.
Right.
So when we come back from the break, Andrew's going to tell me what I did wrong, even though he doesn't do that. He's going to tell me how not to use a hammer in those situations. So we will be back after this break. not done. Welcome back to the last segment of this episode of What Matters. The time always goes too fast, especially when Andrew is with me. So we are talking about forgiveness. Obviously, with forgiveness, there sometimes comes reconciliation, forgiving yourself. And now we're on to talking to people who are identified, sometimes self-identified as non-talkers. So,
Right.
and I had given Andrew a bit of an example, but you go ahead. I'll let you take the
So
lead on this
I was
one.
trying to recall, because it happened so quickly. I was trying to recall the example, because there are many kinds of non-talkers. But in the situation where somebody becomes a non-talker about a particular issue,
Topic.
especially when there is the question of forgiveness and what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
I acknowledge that I hurt you. I said I'm sorry. I don't want to talk about it again.
Anymore.
And the talker now becomes a non-talker. So what I don't think a lot of people understand is that just because you've said sorry doesn't mean that's the end of the experience for the other person. They're still alive, they're still moving, they still get to go through life dealing with what you've put on them, so to speak. So if you want to be in that relationship and be supportive, it's going to be important for you to be able to tolerate them working through something. Now, there's a difference between working through something and then beating a dead horse.
Yeah, holding someone hostage with a past action.
Exactly.
You know, and everything ends up going back to, and that, I think that was kind of his point. Because my example was having an ex where something had happened. I got the apology, but the apology was followed by, and now you will never bring this up ever again. We are not going to talk about it, and you're not going to beat me up with it, because that's how he felt. He felt that every time I brought it up,
Right.
I was reaccusing him or beating him up with it. But like you said, it was just that I wasn't done. And I didn't, and it's not even a horse I wanted to continue to beat. I would have loved to bury it, but it was very much alive and kicking
Right.
within me. So even though I was willing to try to go forward, he was at a point where it was like, okay, now I said sorry, we're done with this part,
Right.
and we're going to go on, skip happily, merrily forth. And I was like, well, I don't really know about all that.
Right.
Not really sure that we're skipping just yet.
Exactly, and that's part of the reason for the book, because I see it with couples time and time again. There's nobody who's perfect. We're going to make mistakes or decisions that hurt the other person.
Mm-hmm.
What is important for us to understand is when somebody has been hurt and you're talking about moving forward, truly moving forward, being reconciled, not staying in the relationship, because some people stay together and they're not reconciled.
They live in the same house.
You know, we received a question, a comment about the rehabilitation part of reconciliation. Is it just making amends? And reconciliation is more than just making amends. It's really acknowledging the grief and the loss about what has happened, and now the two of you turn to look to the future. How do we want to move forward? But if something has happened for you and it's still unresolved,
Mm-hmm.
just because somebody says I'm sorry and they mean it doesn't mean that they've done a good job at understanding how you've been impacted.
Right.
And how you've been impacted yesterday might be very different than how you're impacted tomorrow,
Right.
and next week and next year. Say, for example, and there are many more examples than somebody who's been unfaithful.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say somebody's unfaithful and you forgive and you're moving forward, and a year goes by and then you see this person again. What do you think is going to happen?
You get undone. All the bandage, the stitches come out, and
sometimes that is what happens. Or you're watching a movie, and then that scene plays out where somebody's unfaithful. That's going to trigger stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is for the person who was who their partner was unfaithful. Some of that is theirs to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you're moving forward together, it is also an opportunity for the other person to kind of walk you through that and acknowledge, yeah, I can see why it would impact you. I can see why it would upset you again. Right? And then it is an opportunity to apologize again. But then it does make sense that as I come to you, let's say I was the one who was hurt, how I come to you about it is going to make a big difference.
You mean don't throw a shoe at me?
No.
No?
Just because I'm angry doesn't mean that I can treat you any way. Even if you were the one who
Remix on that one. Just because I'm angry does not mean I can treat you anyway. And
Right.
I think that is such an important point, that because you're hurt, what do they say? Hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
And it's a very dangerous cycle.
Yeah.
So in that situation where, as you're saying, you have a trigger, you see a scene in a movie, and that feeling comes up. One, there's parts that you need to deal with yourself. It's an internal thing. But then the other person may recognize that your body language has changed, or maybe you're fortunate to say, you know what, wow, like that reminds me of the time that you XYZ'd. And you're saying that's your opportunity to apologize again. But a lot of people feel that once I've apologized, I shouldn't do it again. And that's where that talker becomes that non-talker, where we seal that off. But the other scenario where you're talking about someone who used to communicate and no longer will, and on a very specific topic, but what about those people, men and women, who don't talk about their feelings? They don't. How do you have a relationship with someone who does not speak on how they feel about something that's happened, and even the baggage? Understanding someone's history can really help you understand how they are and what their triggers may be. If you were abandoned as a child, abandonment may be a huge thing for you. Right. So doing something casual like, I'm leaving, could be super traumatic for the person.
Right.
And trigger certain things.
Right. Even if you don't say it and you walk away in an argument.
Right.
Right. Or you just turn around in a conversation. That whole idea of being self-aware is really, really important. So if I know what my stuff is, I'm going to be better able to differentiate my stuff from your stuff.
Yes.
And I'm going to allow that you have your stuff, because sometimes in our heads, people are supposed to be perfect and not have any stuff. Because sometimes our stuff is contributing to the fact that we're with this person, with their stuff. So, why would I pick a non-talker to begin with, right? I'm a talker, right? I know that I talk. So why am I going to pick somebody
who doesn't talk?
Right?
Because you got stuff.
Right? But there's also the reality that all of our traits are double-sided coins. Mm-hmm. That same non-talker is probably going to appeal to you because they might be a great listener. They might be the strong, silent type who doesn't yell at people, who doesn't blow their top. And then after the honeymoon phase, you get the other side of the coin. It's just like,
would you say something?
You're not talking to me. What's going on? They were never a talker. So now you turn it around and wanted to change this person from who they were.
Right.
Right? So part of it is acceptance. This is who the person is on some level. And what helps people, I really like the double-sided coin thing, because if we see certain things as strengths and not just weaknesses or liabilities, it helps us to bring the tone and the volume down on some things. So even if we want to approach them, we can say, you know what, I really love the way that you reflect and you think on these things before you talk about them. I'm going to take a couple pages out of your book.
I like that one.
However, it's helpful for me to know what's going on in your mind. Like, what stops you from sharing that? Mm-hmm. So if you are creating an environment that's open for them, it's not forcing them to talk, like trying to pry their mouths open and say, you're going to talk to me whether you like it or not, right? Or, sometimes people have learned it's better not to talk to you, because if I tell you this, it's going to be one big bag of drama, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And again, it might not just be that person. It might have been happening in generations, or even what they see in the media, like that's how it works. That might be their understanding of a relationship. So part of it is acceptance. Part of it is seeing what's good and not so good about it. Part of it is knowing your approach and how to kind of cultivate that.
And I think a part of it, from what you just said, is also in your selection. In knowing yourself better, you will be more thoughtful of the people that you include in your life. So, that strong silent type, it does, especially, like, I talk so much. So that would appeal to me because you'd be listening to me, and I need an audience. So it would be really great if, he was listening. And, I've met men that they talk a lot, and I'm just sitting there going, wow, you talk a lot.
There's no room for me, right? There's no room, right? I can't get a word in.
Yes, I can't talk to you because you talk so much. But then as time goes on, when I do need that feedback from you, that's how I found you. And so the accepting that, this person never changed. It's just that now your requirements are different. So you're asking for different things from them. And maybe how you're asking is shutting them down further. So in again, so everything seems to come back to this: know thyself.
Yes, becoming self-aware is it's so important. It's invaluable.
Yes, and that helps in every relationship on every level: parental, you to your parents, you to your children, marital, relationship wise, work wise, friendship wise. All of those things, they help you navigate. Because you navigate yourself with more clarity, you can then interact with other people and bring less baggage, bring less stuff to
Right.
the table, and really be your authentic self. So again, we had other things. We always have other things that we want to talk about. So that's why Andrew will be back in October again. I'm really, really glad that you agreed to be here on a regular basis. So everybody, if we've touched on anything and you would like to know what tool to use, send us a line, send us a message. Coach Drew Can on Instagram, Erica Elita on Instagram. You'll find us both on Facebook by our full government names. And we will be back again next month. I think it's the 25th of October.
Something like that.
Something like that. We don't have our calendars in front of us, but I will be back next Tuesday with another amazing guest sharing another amazing story, experience, and mission. So please join me again for What Matters, Tuesdays here on TCN. Thanks, everyone. We will see you again.
Bye.
Bye.